Hello guys, and welcome to one of our very first and most interesting videos. It's basically a progress update where we give you progress obviously, and we go in with some Q&A to give you some questions on the Ishin fan translation project. We are your hosts from Team Historic. I'm Solid Cal. I'm joined by Rock, our fantastic translator who suffers through all that text. And we've got MS Low, who unfortunately is going to be mute for the time being, but they're here in spirit, and I'll be hopefully explaining what their answers are to questions that you've asked. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into the first one. So our first question comes from I for Iron Man. What was the biggest unexpected challenge when it came to translating Ishin? I'll throw that over to you, Rock, because you do the most translating out of all of us.
Alright, so the biggest unexpected challenge, I honestly thought that, I thought the dialect would honestly be the harder part, but honestly, the dialect got a little bit easier once I got used to, after I saw it enough, researched it, it became a little bit easier to understand. The hardest part for me, honestly, has been just how, when you really get into the files to try to translate everything, there's not really any context around what you're translating. You're just translating, you don't know where in the game you're translating at all times necessarily. Sometimes you do, and that makes it a little bit easier. Definitely when you're doing the sorry, I can't remember the word.
We're professionals, don't worry about it.
yeah. But when you're translating, say, like scripted dialogue, like the video scenes, those are usually much easier because you know where you are in the game. And, it's very easy to reference where that's coming from. But some of the files that you get into and translate, you can have two pieces of dialogue that are, scattered way across the game from each other and have absolutely no contextual clue as to what they're talking about. So it provides a really interesting challenge to try to pull all of that together into a cohesive piece of dialogue.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I've tried translating as an amateur myself, and when you don't know the context of something, it makes it all that much harder. Like Rock or no, but Japanese in general, you can have one word mean 5 or 50 different things depending on the context it's said in, or you could have a kanji that looks the same repeated 5 times and it's a completely different word from what you first saw. And yeah, like Lowe's saying to us in the chat, because sadly still muted, it's a terrifying thing because am I gonna say something wrong? Am I gonna offend somebody at this stage by saying, oh, you're gonna go marry your dog, but when you're actually just saying I'm gonna go down to the shops, it could mean something completely different. So we really appreciate Rock for going through a lot of that, especially when sometimes we can't give him the context of what's being said in a scene properly.
Yeah, and I think part of it is it will just get a little bit easier once I have time to actually get down and do a little bit of QA with the translations. I think after I'm able to kind of vet them a little better and see where they actually occur in the game, I'll be able to definitely fix them and make something a little bit better.
And here's hoping. Lo, you've got a job on you when we force you to go through 40 minutes of gameplay to get to context again.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's a little joke. I made Lo go through 40 minutes of pretty much the ending boss fight to get to one dynamic intro, and sometimes it'll happen in translation. The biggest challenge for me is finding out that I've made a typo somewhere. So I'll be watching it from what Lowe's recorded, and I'll be like, I've got to go back and do that again. So yeah, it happens, but I think that's the fun of it, is making sure, not making, accents and dialects like we're saying. Making sure that you get everything correct is probably one of my biggest challenges. Because obviously, when something's translated, you've also got to do the extra work of reordering a lot of words. Because, you know, you'll get literal translations, and then you're like, okay, this doesn't read off well in English, I'm gonna have to do some Tetris on here, like glue stuff together, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, so yeah, sorry for our long-winded question, but we hope that answers yours, Iron Man. Right, so our next question comes from that Ishin guy, which we know as, well, the Ishin guy. He was probably one of the first people to get really excited about the progress we're doing here. So he asks, Yakuza Ishin is based in the samurai era of Japan, as is Kenzan in brackets. What are the challenges in bringing something so rooted in earlier Japanese culture to an English audience? How far do you think you'll have to go with taking localization liberties, for example? And how do you feel about those challenges? How do you feel those challenges differ from officially localized Yakuza games set in the modern era? Whew, right, so I'll start that off. It's honestly, it goes back to the first question from Iron Man. It's a challenge because there's certain ways people will speak in 1800s Japan compared to modern era Japan, because certain words and dialects and kanji change a little bit over time. So sometimes we do have to take a lot of liberties for localization, because some words just don't fit in the context when you read them in English. So we try and keep liberties to a minimum, but if it does happen, then we have to do it. And the challenge, I think the challenge differs more because we're a small team, pretty much. There's like about 5 to 6 of us, depending on who's available, whereas a localization team's got probably about 50 plus 100 people. So they've got a lot more, I guess, resources compared to what we have.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me adding on, actually, I think the Yakuza series is, I think in general, especially with actually, I'm not familiar if Kenzan has this feature, but Yakuza Ishin, for those of you that aren't aware, it has a feature that they've actually added a dictionary of sorts that you can pull out from the pause menu at any time, and it actually appears sometimes during dialogues. This is actually a really handy feature because, I mean, in general, there's a lot of terms that it's actually impossible to explain in the amount of space that we're given in very many instances, because, you know, society in Edo era Japan, or, you know, for that matter, any era of Japan, you know, probably back that's not very well known by the, you know, other people in the world, probably before, I would have to say, you know, 50 years ago or so. There's so many nuanced words and traditions that are, even if you understand the Japanese, can be kind of hard to understand, because there's just a, you know, it's a complete cultural difference. So actually, with the localization liberties, we can push those down to actually a pretty small amount because we have this feature, and it happens to occur when we usually need it most, which is kind of a godsend, if I do say so myself. It's pretty awesome. So while it is very difficult, and there are certain times when we don't really have a choice, actually, because there is that feature, we are able to explain some of these concepts and avoid losing out on some of the really important context, which is just this social environment that definitely doesn't exist today in Japan, and it can be very difficult to understand without diving very deep into history books.
Yeah, I add on to that. Honestly, I forgot about the dictionary, but the dictionary really is probably... I know Kenzan has got a dictionary, but it's it's used in a different way in Kensan from what I remember. Whereas Ishin, it's more like, okay, this word might not be familiar to you. Here's how it's used in this context back then. And you'll have stuff like that, or it'll come up with places from history, like Edo Castle, for example. It'll give you a good idea of what this place's significance is and what it's about. And that is pretty much fantastic for us to be able to translate what that says as well, because we're able to say this is how you would pronounce it in Japanese with obviously the English translation, and you get this nice good explanation of it. And honestly, I hope we get to use that more, because it's a fantastic feature that not many people will use going through the game if you're not fluent in Japanese yourself. And yeah, like Lo says in our chat, it's nice trivia in general. Like for example, there's a part in the game where you go to fight a certain boss. I think it's like chapter 12. I'm not going to put any spoilers, but you'll have a dialogue box come up where Ryoma's having his inner thoughts, and it'll come up with this dictionary, glossary, whatever you want to call it, about this place. So you get this nice bit of history from it. You're like, oh, this is what it is. And that also plays into our localization liberties as well, because the dictionary allows us to add more context to something, whereas in Ishin by default it's just like probably about one sentence worth of something, whereas we've got a box worth of being able to put like a paragraph in there if we wanted to go that crazy. So yeah, it's fantastic trivia, and hopefully we'll be able to do more with that. Right, on to our next question. We've got Dante BC. What's the most challenging thing in translating Ishin? Are there any language quirks or specifics in this game, and how do you preserve them?
Oh, I have a recommendation for how we should answer this question. It's a little bit similar to the first one, but I think there's something we may not have talked about as much, which is the retexturing, which I'm not really the one who knows most about that. So do you want to talk about that a bit, Cal?
Yeah, the retexturing. This retexturing was mostly done by Lo and our sadly absent friend Frisky Noodle, which is an interesting username in general when I first met the guy, but yeah, both Lo and Frisky Noodle was the ones to do a lot of the UI, and you'll find a lot of language quirks in the UI as well. Like there's certain things, for example, we got the ranking system, and by default it means something completely different, but with texture limitations and it reusing a sort of reusing another part of a texture that was used on something else, like the ranking system, for example, where originally it would be like you're powerful, you're great, whereas we took the liberty for that to make it something like heroic, and a historical first, which originally we mistakenly badly translated as historical fist, and that's a joke that'll never die down in our team.
Oh yeah, historical fist. That was the name of our group for a while.
That was historical fist, and it was one that Lo didn't want us to change. He's like, no, I'm keeping this, you can just have the actual one, I'm keeping this. But we changed that eventually. But it's nice to have little quirks, because I find Japanese to be very expressive in certain ways. They get excited about something. Like it's like when you hear somebody speak a language that you're used to. I've heard them listen to somebody who's not native Japanese speak Japanese, and it's all this excitement. And I think Japan in general's got a lot of quirks that are sometimes, again, hard to translate over. But we do find ways around, like, what's the equivalent in English to something like we're saying, like, badass, for example? What can we make to make that sound a lot better, but also keep the feeling of that quirk as well?
Yeah, and I think the other difficult thing is that, uh, with the Yakuza series, there's just a lot of like a lot of big lettering, and it seems like sometimes the user interface is screaming at you, but when you actually try to go and translate that, the textures that they use are so small that we have to actually sit there with some of these and think about them for 20 or 30 minutes, like what can we actually do with this to make to make something that even makes sense in English. Just because some of the textures are reused with other parts, so then you have to think about, well, you now have one word that's broken up into several little pieces, and you have to somehow you know make it so that when one letter is added onto the end of each other texture, it still makes sense. So it's like a really crazy thing, and it's insane that Lowe and Cal and Frisky have done such a good job on putting this all together. But I mean, I think with the tools that we have, and our capabilities, as it's sometimes as limited as they may seem, I think that we've done a pretty good job with what we have.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Limitations are a very prominent thing in translating, especially when you're a fan translator, because you're not given the source, so to speak, like actual localization teams have, because they can just go in and be like, okay, we just changed this coding to use this texture instead. Whereas we look at it and we're like, okay, I'm gonna need to get a piece of duct tape, a few matchsticks, a rubber band, and see if I can work with something here. And
Yeah, no kidding.
oh boy. And yeah, like Lowe's saying, on the texture size, it mostly depends on its size and how the game actually handles them. Sometimes we get no space to write anything, other times we get loads of space that we don't know what to do with it. And with that, we think of all possible English words. So, literally every pseudonym, which is a very big word.
Yeah, I think I remember actually pulling out, well, not pulling out physically, but actually going to thesaurus.com on several occasions to try to figure out something that didn't sound weird but was similar enough and short enough.
It yeah, that's another localizing challenge. And on a tangent of that, it gives us a big insight to how localization teams have to work. I mean, for example, if you follow any localization member on their Twitter or anything, you can appreciate them a lot more with what they're able to pull out of thin air. That means the same thing, but understandable in English as well.
Yeah, I think it seems like a pretty difficult job, but the people who have been doing it for years seem to have very creative minds with how they, kind of work the magic.
Yep, pretty much. And onto Dante BC's next question. What can we do to support your work and maybe provide some type of help? At the moment, all we can ask is that you join in with the server that we're in at the moment if you're not already there, and just give us support when we need it. If you happen to know something, like help us when we post updates, like update pictures saying, why don't you try this certain bit of text to see if that sounds better. And we've had that in the past where members have given us a bit of a hand, and it's all appreciating because we're all getting towards the same goal in the end, which is a fully translated Ishin that everybody can play and just be like, how did I miss out on this game before?
I definitely think, at least for me, the biggest deal is just showing your support, and then running over to our feedback and opinions channel and just telling us what you think. It's it's there for a reason. If we're doing something right, let us know. If there's something that you see and you think needs work, or you want to ask how we're doing something, we'll answer you to the best of our ability, and we'll do our best to see how we can implement your honest feedback, because that's what we're really aiming for. We're not translating this and doing all of this work just for ourselves. I mean, this is supposed to be a project that benefits everybody who's interested.
Yep, exactly. Just give your opinions, give your feedback, and like Lowe's saying, your love is all we need. So I'll put a picture of Kiru doing the big heart symbol from Kiwami 2 there. Every comment you type out means a lot. It helps it helps Lowe stay motivated and moving forward as much as it does the rest of the team as well. Right, our next question comes from Blashy or Blashy, I think Blashy 101. I'm sorry if I'm butchering anybody's usernames at the moment. They say, hi, question for the Ishin video. Is it possible to patch in the Yakuza 5 Kiru appearance as a premium adventure costume as a bonus for the translation patch, or will the patch strictly be for translation? Thanks, smiley face. I can answer this one basically on my own, but they're talking about a Yakuza 5 model of Kiru that's left within Ishin's files because it was done as a test model, because Ishin was made pretty much not long after Yakuza 5 released in Japan, from what I understand. So we got this leftover model, and while it would be utterly amazing for us to put it into Premium Adventure, we currently can't code anything new in. We are basically stuck with what's there by default. I mean, if you want to model swap it in, you're able to, but for the moment it's just going to be strictly translated stuff, and then if some new tool comes out later down the line, we might add it. We'll have to see. And yeah, what Lowe's saying as well, adding new content to the game is currently impossible with the current modding tools, as I've mentioned. Even if we could patch it in, there wouldn't be really any reason to keep it only for the translation project, as it's kind of unrelated. So while it's a good bonus, we probably won't do it anytime soon. But like I say, if new tools come out, or if you want to do it yourself when you learn the tools as well, if they do come out and get better, you're more than welcome to. Right, our next question's from Camping Car. Or is it Camping Carl? No, Camping Carl, sorry. Will this project be dropped if Sega announces their own translated version? Honestly, it's kind of a question, like, we could still carry on even with the work done, so ours would probably be as close as it could be, but a localization team might get it done much faster than we can.
Yeah, I would have to say this is purely my opinion, and it doesn't represent anything that anyone else on the team is saying. I think, personally, I would see value in continuing to work on the project, even if it's announced, because, I mean, we get lots of different announcements all the time, but, at least half of them fall through, so I would rather just wait and see proof that there's something happening and that, that they're going to follow through before I would want to consider just, calling it quits on this. And that's my personal opinion. I mean, I think, there'd still be a reason for us to continue going until, we see that this is going to be a thing.
Yeah, like I say, we'll probably still continue it. Lowe said that in his opinion, there would be a huge chance to drop the project with possibility of releasing the files in their current state. Although we still wouldn't mind help. So yeah, we've got ideas where we could drop it, but at the same time, like Rocker said, things can fall through, unfortunately. And if they do fall through and we've stopped purely on the basis of, oh, they might be doing a localization of this, that's work that we missed out that we could have done and been even closer to finishing the project. So yeah, at the moment it might be a maybe, but even if it is, we're probably still going to keep carrying on till the end, or until Sega's like, hey, can we have your help doing this? And then we'll be like, yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't put it past Sega to literally ask for help, because I mean that would be like half the work done. So
Yeah.
We'll see what the future holds pretty much in the end. We got 3 questions from Korvar. What's your favourite, funniest line or bit of text you've translated? Oh, there's so many.
Yeah, there's a lot. You know, instead of going for something specific, I'm sure everyone has their own little thing, but the one thing that stands out to me that was hilarious is translating one of the just bystander dialogue files, just what the random text box that pop up when people are talking in the town as you run by them. So nothing really that's important to the actual storyline other than just immersion. So while translating this file, I mean, you first start out and it's just people talking. Then it goes and people are drunk and they're very obviously drunk and they're acting really stupid. And then the next thing I know, everything is on fire and people are running all over the place. So I'm getting this visual in my mind of just like, something's on fire, the whole town's on fire, and all of a sudden we went from everyone's drunk and having fun to everyone yelling run. And just the fact that I have no context whatsoever, it was hilarious to me. I had no clue, where I would place all of this. I mean, frankly, I haven't actually finished the game myself, but to me, it stood out as a really funny piece of content.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you've got no context, you can just have this really weird vision, but obviously it's at different places, like Rock said at the very start, because he's got no context or visual representation of where all this dialogue said. He's just in fact imagining something completely different, like someone got drunk, set fire to something, and everybody's screaming. Which I wouldn't mind being as crazy as it is. But for me, there was translating the bathhouse sub-story. Basically, the context of this bathhouse sub-story is Ryoma goes to the bathhouse that you visit in chapter 2, and he just basically has a wash, comes out, and finds that his clothes have gone. He sees a guy drop the bag of his clothes, and then runs off, and then he's just running out butt naked after this person. Not completely butt naked, he's got his I'm not sure what the type of clothing is that he wears. It's like it's like a towel wrapped in the style of underpants is all I can describe it as, because I don't know the Japanese word for it. But
oh, it's called fundoshi.
Yes, he's wearing one of those that's covering his valuables. So he's running after this guy, you basically have to run after him, and then when you finally catch up with him, the police end up coming. They've got a different name, but pretty much they're Japanese police, and they literally... Ryoma's like, okay, you're done for now, and then turns to the police, and the police aren't looking at the thief that stole his clothes, they're looking at him, and he's like, why are you looking at me? The thief's over there. And they're just like, oh, so you're the one who's been running around naked around town. And then he's like, no, I was running after the guy because he stole my clothes. And then the guy and the police is just like, no excuses. And then Ryma's like, oh gosh, I've got to get out of here and get back to the bathhouse. And then all you hear is the policeman go, arrest that pervert, he's getting away. And that falls into Yakuza's humour in general, be it Ryoga Kotoku or Yakuza, whichever name you want to use. The Japanese humour's fantastic, and I was laughing about it when I did a bit of amateur translation on it, because I'm like, if this is what it's actually saying, then this is going to be one of my favourite sub-stories in the final completed project. Let's see, Lowe says, these need context and visuals during the main story. Okita asks help from a worker, but he's so clueless and unexpected, I love his dumb reaction. Hey you there, can you read this? Me? Who else would I be talking to? Get over here! And obviously that's from a cutscene. But yeah, it's very Majima-esque, and it's it's fantastic. Like I say, the whole game's got its lot of humour while having this serious story based on real historical figures, but having the RGG Yakuza flair to it. The next question from the same person: what's been the most fun part of the project? Most fun part for me, and I think Rock might be able to agree with this, is just finding out the context of everything in the game. Because, like, again, it's very Japanese, so you wouldn't understand certain things. But it's just finding out the full context of something, and it brings you this new appreciation for the game in general.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, even translating it, it feels kind of like playing it, because the just everything that shows up in the game is so, like, it's got that really chaotic Yakuza style, and I mean, even translating it, it's just like some of the things that come up are just so surprising, like in that, maybe I should say shocking. But I think it's really fun, because a lot of those dialogues, we talk about it, we have no clue what this could possibly be about. And I think for me also, other than just the actual translation itself, it's been really fun to work with this team, because I think everyone's got their own quirks, and it's been fun to get to know everybody as we work on this together and understand how we each flow. And it's nice that we each seem to have kind of our own little area that we specialize in, so it's been a good balance so far for the project.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. Everybody in the team as well has just been fun. Like, we have certain humour, and Rock here gives us history lessons on Japanese history. Like, I had a nice history lesson on Edo used to be, well, obviously the Edo period version of Tokyo before they changed the name from Edo to Tokyo, and Kyoto stopped being the capital and they made Tokyo the capital. So in the game and outside of the game, we've had a lot of fun history and just fun in general. And speaking of fun and suffering, Lo's answer to this question is: every time Solical, myself, makes a typo and keeps doing the same mistake over and over again, and I can yell at him freely. And this is why I sent him to do 40 minutes worth of gameplay. That's his punishment for making me feel silly for as many typos as I make. But yeah, this team is fantastic. And us being able to even translate this in general, because another tangent, but we've come a long way from when we started, which was last year, April, I think, to now. There's been new tools made, and this literally, a bit of history, this whole project literally started from me and Lo messing with files, me hex editing some cutscene files, being like, what can we do here? And fast forward a year later, and here we are with Lo, myself, Rock, Frisk. We've had KHH, who you'll know as doing the subtitle translations for the walkthroughs of Kenzan and Ishin. And we've also got another guy that I met called Kevin that basically helps us with little translations as well. So, just exciting to see where we've got to in a year, and I couldn't ask for anything better. Right, and our final question from Kovar: when the project's finally finished, how do you plan to celebrate?
I think when it's finally finished, at least Frisky, Low, and Solid Cow plan to celebrate by actually playing the game all the way through in English.
Yeah, it's hard to say how we're going to celebrate, because I mean, most localization teams would have a party where they just all make a toast together, but obviously limitations to us traveling, I don't think that'll happen. But I think as a celebration, the team in general, we might stream the game and give insider info to certain things that we did, if we can remember them all, because Ishin's a very big game. But Yeah, well, it's hard to say. For me, I'll probably just have fun with the game, stream it with the guys, and we can just literally hold our heads up high that we did a fantastic project that's going to benefit so many fans around the world. Let's see. Lo says that he'll probably do his best to create the best kick-ass release trailer and hope everyone likes it. Because, yeah, if you've been watching our updates, Lo himself does all the recording and the editing for that stuff. So be sure to give him a high five, a hug maybe, and just appreciate all the guy does. And the same goes for Rock, Frisk, Kevin, KHH. They've all been beneficial in where we are now. So just appreciate everybody, give them high fives, keep us going, and let's see where we can get to in the end. Right, that leaves us with no more questions. Thanks to I for Iron Man, That Ishin Guy, Dante BC, Blashy 101, Camping Carl, and Korvar for giving us some questions to answer. It's been fun to answer them, and we've already had a few laughs again with ourselves. So now we come on to where's the progress at the moment. The progress so far is we've made it up to chapter 3 in the game, and we're making progress where we can. Obviously, again, as this being a fan project, we're usually focusing on real life. So progress might be slow, but rest assured we are working on it. So we'll see where we're going, and we hope that you've been enjoying this Q&A and getting this little progress. So from all of us, which I can guess from the guys, is just thanks for supporting us over the course of a year, which is mind-blowing to think about, and just helping us where we needed.
Yeah, thanks everyone for supporting us and, you know, keeping the hype up about the translation. It's taking a while, and, you know, it is because of, you know, we have our personal lives to deal with, but, you know, we are chugging along, and when this gets done, it will definitely have been worth it.
Yeah, and who knows where we might be next. We might be translating something else. We'll make Lo suffer even more for something else in the future. And oh, it's always going to be a good time. But jokes aside, again, thanks everybody, and thank you everybody, and see you in the future, and thanks for watching.
Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.